Good afternoon, I'm Sean McCoy with Inside Sources, and welcome to this event. All railroad meetings must start with a safety briefing, so we'll bring up LGO to the safety briefing.
All right, everyone, good afternoon. We're located in room 485 in the Russell Center office building. In the event of an emergency, I was out 911 to reach Capitol Police. You need to exit the building. There's stairs located on either side of the room, the end of the corridor. Can I get a quick show of hands for CPR, sir? Great. Name is located around the corner for the Senator John Quincy's office. Please let someone know if you have any special medical needs or please be aware of any.
Inside Sources is very pleased to co-host this event with the Association of American Railroads, and I'd like to now introduce AAR's President and CEO, Ed Hamburger.
I'll tell you what, it is exciting. It is exciting to see everybody in this room here to celebrate railroads and what railroads do for America. And here to celebrate the first ever railroad award that we are giving to the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee and his colleague, the ranking Democrat. We're honoring the two of them because they understand and have, throughout their careers, pursued policies that help rail, both freight and passenger, be able to play the key role they both do in powering America's economy forward. In 2015, ladies and gentlemen, helped bring across the finish line an Amtrak reauthorization bill, a fast surface transportation bill that included many safety provisions, helping make us even more safe than we already are, and for the first time since its inception, a Surface Transportation Board reauthorization. They did it all in 1 year. They did it by working together. They did it recognizing that there are important roles that both freight and passenger rail play in the country. I would first ordinarily call up the chairman as I protocol, but he has very graciously said, recognizing...
No, let him go first.
See how it is? Let me call them both up. But first recognize Senator Thune. The railroads first came to South Dakota in about 1870. There are about 11 of them out there now. I'll just tell you some of the things they do in South Dakota. Over 1,700 rail miles. South Dakota was 6th in the country in originated rail tons of farm products, 3rd in the country in originated rail tons of ethanol, and 2nd in the origination of dry distilled grain, a byproduct of ethanol production used as animal feed. So it gives me great pleasure to present to the chairman, the former state rail director of the South Dakota Rail Agency. The first ever 2017 Railroad Achievement Award, Chairman John Fish.
Thank you very much, Ed, and I'm very honored. This is a really neat recognition. It's very special to be able to share it with my colleague on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, Senator Nelson from Florida, who I've worked very closely with on this and many other issues. And so we're delighted to be able to be with you today. As Ed mentioned, I was at one time state rail director for the state of South Dakota. It's a job I really enjoy. I learned, I think, a few things about railroading, but there's always a lot more to learn. And but I kind of come by it sort of naturally too. My grandfather came from Norway back in 1906 through Ellis Island. And when they got to the United States, they didn't, I think the only English they spoke, I'm told, were the words apple pie coffee, which evidently a lot of on the way over. But their name when they got to this country wasn't Thune, it was Yelsvik. It was spelled G-J-E-L-S-V-I-K. So lots of consonants. And the immigration officials asked them to change their name because they thought it would be difficult to spell and pronounce for people in this country. And so They picked the name Thun because they worked on a farm called the Thun Farm near Bergen, Norway. So that's how Nikolai Yeltsin became Nick Thun. And they very quickly were transported to South Dakota. They had a sponsor out in the middle of South Dakota and began to work on the railroad. They were building the railroads for the western part of the state. They had gotten over the Missouri River, as you said, in the 1800s. And they had to build a bridge across the Missouri. When they got that done, they started building west. And so they worked on the railroad near my hometown, the place where my dad still lives. And learned English, started a small merchandising company after they saved some money to do that, which later became a hardware. And to this day, in Mitchell, South Dakota, there is a Thun hardware. It's no longer, the family's not associated with it, but they kept the name. And so there's a lot of history in my family associated with railroading. On my mom's side, my grandfather actually worked in the railroads. He was born in Canada. He worked up there and actually lost his life in a railroading accident. So a lot of ties to railroading and to this industry. And I just know how important it is, not only to South Dakota, but to our country. 40% of all the freight ton miles in this country go over the rail. In South Dakota, we ship about 15 million tons of product a year. We originate 3 times as much as we terminate in our state, which means we need railroads to get access to the marketplace all around the world. And so it's critically important to our economy, agriculture, energy. You go right down the list. The things, the fuel that powers our homes, that provides the fuel for our cars, the things that we eat, the things that we consume. They're more than likely going to ship on rail. So it's critically important. Senator Nelson and I were very involved, as Ed mentioned, in working with all of you in this room and all the stakeholders on some legislation in the last couple of years that we were able to get across the finish line. The FAST Act contained a number of provisions that were important to railroading. Of course, the STB reauthorization, or rail safety measures, Amtrak reauthorization, and of course lots of PTC provisions included in that bill. But yeah, yes you have. But lots of things I think we were able to get done, and it was important because there were a lot of issues that hadn't been dealt with in a while, and we were happy to be able to be involved in trying to get some of those to a conclusion. Railroads last year in this country invested $26 billion. That's $280,000 per rail mile in this country. And that's led to some pretty remarkable results. We've seen a 44% reduction in train accidents from 2000 to today. And a lot of that has to do with the kind of investment the railroads are making. I know you're going to talk about some rail safety issues today, but please know that Senator Nelson and I and our committee are very engaged on these issues. Transportation is critical to our country, and railroading is critical to our transportation infrastructure. So we're looking forward to hearing what the administration has to put forward in terms of an infrastructure proposal. We think that all the modes of transportation ought to be participating in that, and when we receive that, we will look forward to doing everything we can to shape it and advance good policy that is conducive to making sure that we have a strong railroad network in this country that we can continue to serve the interests and needs of so many of our citizens, not just in rural places like South Dakota, but all across America. So thank you very much. I'm very honored. We'll hand it off to my colleague in Florida.
Chairman. And just as an aside, the chairman mentioned all the grain leaving South Dakota. A lot of that is bound for export. A lot of it is bound for export out of the Pacific Northwest. But the number one commodity moving across the border between the United States and Mexico is U.S. grain in the South. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as we take a look at trade policies in the months ahead. The second award is to the ranking Democrat on the committee, Chairman Nelson. Railroad Chamber, not the chairman. Ranking Member Phil Nelson. The railroads came to Florida in 1885, and today there are 5,000 freight rail employees living in Florida, the fourth most in the country. There are 14 freight railroads working there, and of course CSX, Florida East Coast, are headquartered there. So Senator Nelson, coming by his knowledge of railroading right at home, The three biggest things happening by rail in Florida: intermodal, which is where the container or the trailer or the truck rides in the back of the rail car; phosphates used for fertilizing South Dakota grain; and surprising to me, the Panhandle of Florida is a source of tens of thousands of carloads of forest products. So all across the gamut of the economy, freight rail helps keep Florida's economy moving. And so, Senator Nelson, if you would, the 2017 Railroad Achievement Award, Senator Bill Nelson.
Well, I want you to know that my family came to Florida before there were railroads. As a matter of fact, great-great-grandfather came from Denmark. He was a sailor. He was a teenager. He ended up in New York and got into a barroom fight. And he was afraid that he was going to be arrested, and he ran and hid. He ran down to the wharf, and he hid in the ship. And the ship cast off for Port St. Joe, Florida, in 1829. And like John Thune, his name, Danish, was Jens Nissen. And so when he arrived in America, he anglicized it to John Nelson. And I know where that great-great-grandfather is buried in the middle, a little cemetery in the middle of the cow pasture. I know where his son, John Nelson, is buried on one side in the country church of Orange Hill. And his son, my grandfather that I knew, John Wesley Nelson, is buried on another side in Orange Hill in a little country church. Now, I grew up listening to the railroad. As a matter of fact, the Florida East Coast Railway runs right through my family's property. And so a railroad has been as natural a thing to me all my life. As a matter of fact, that railroad is there, and that's how Florida was developed. Just like so much of the West, as it was westward, so it was. And Henry Flagler, an entrepreneur from the North, saw the opportunity to bring very well-to-do Northeasterners on his railroad during the winter, where they would come and vacation in the hotels that he built, first in St. Augustine, and then in the area of Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, and then he took it as far south as Palm Beach. The Breakers Hotel was a part of Flagler's establishment. And then he did what was thought to be impossible at the time. He took it all the way to Key West, of which a major hurricane in the mid-1920s then wiped out the railroad on those long bridges going to Key West, and so they did not build it back. But the rest of the railroad always brought people who were tired of the snow and the cold, and they came south. The natives, known as crackers, Florida crackers, would say, and would used to tell me as a kid, that the Florida crackers lived off of fish and alligators during the summer and off of the Yankees during the winter. All because of the railroad. And so it is a part of our culture. It's a part of who we are, no matter where we were in the United States. In the FAST Act that John was mentioning that we were fortunate to have bipartisan support for, It started the effort on, for example, positive train control. We put money into it, and also other monies going into investments. And as we look to the future, infrastructure, this is so important for the country. We have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be added to as well as repaired. And not the least of that is also our railroads. And when you think of us wanting to get to where we want to get, to have the delivery of goods on time and not completely clog the roads, in roads that are already clogged, then there's no other choice but the long haul of substantial, sizable goods, and that being on the railroad. And so I look forward to the future with great optimism of working on an infrastructure package that will help us improve our nation's transportation infrastructure. And thank you very much for this great honor. Thank you.
Following those remarks, you know why they were the first two recipients of the Road and Shoe Award. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it now back to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you both senators for joining us. I'm going to invite the panelists to come take their seats up front, and we'll get started on that in just a moment. I'm Sean McCoy. I founded Inside Sources a little over 3 years ago, and we've grown quickly. We're now a team of 5 reporters focused on a range of policy issues, and we've had nearly 800 contributors to the site, ranging from congressional leadership to Fortune 500 CEOs. Our reporting content reaches up to 26 million people each month via a syndication network that reaches about 500 newspapers nationwide. I'm really excited to partner with the Association of American Railroads for this event today, and very excited to moderate this panel. So everyone knows we will be taking audience questions in a little bit. But first I want to get started with having the panelists introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their organizations, and we'll start with Nicholas.
Everybody hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you to AAR and Inside Sources for the opportunity to participate in today's panel. My name is Nicole Rona. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at the Railway Supply Institute. We represent over 250 member companies and act as an advocate for the largest and smallest suppliers to the North American freight and passenger railroads. We represent the full scope of the rail supply industry, so this includes locomotives, freight cars, tank cars, maintenance suppliers, signaling suppliers, and entities. Our mission is to support, connect, and advocate for suppliers by connecting them to their customers and partners. We represent them on the global marketplace as well as in the legislative and regulatory arena. The Railway Supply Institute represents close to, and I love this figure, close to 100,000 employees across the United States. We're a $28 billion a year industry, and we have, I would say, we're within 45 different states in almost every congressional district. So we really touch almost every congressional district and really make an impact on those local communities. 75% of our members are small companies that annual revenue is under $11 million, and they employ about 50 people. And out of those companies, they have a direct impact on our larger suppliers, so think locomotive builders, GE, EMT, Siemens. So there really is a connectivity between the small and the large supplier and how they really benefit the rail industry through safety and research and development. We partner really closely with AAR and the Short Line Association. Amtrak is another big customer for us. So when you think of how the rail directly impact the supply industry and those domestic manufacturing jobs that are so vital to communities across the United States. Whether or not you have a rail line that goes through your community, it is the suppliers in those communities, it's not rail service, that actually produce a widget for Amtrak or a widget or a wheel for Union Pacific, and it all directly relates. So it's a big backbone, and that's why it impacts us so specifically, to the rail supply. So again, thank you, and I'll pass it over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Decker. I'm with Amtrak, and maybe just show of hands, who has ever been a passenger on an Amtrak train? Okay, good. So I think there's pretty broad sort of brand recognition. Certainly, we have a major presence in the Northeast Corridor, but also across the country. We're in 46 states and serve more than 500 communities. And demand for our services continues to grow. My relationship with the railroad industry, I'll call this out for Ed Hamburger, who's back there in the room, goes back 20 years. When I was a House staffer, I worked for a member of Congress who was the ranking member on the Railroad Subcommittee. It was really my first introduction to the importance of the rail network. And I think we all appreciate that for the most part, unless you work in the industry or you work for a member who is on a committee that focuses on the industry, people can't begin to appreciate the complexity, the importance of the network that supports our daily lives. And so I find myself here 20 years later at Amtrak working very closely with our friends and partners in the rail industry, and proud to be part of the Amtrak family. We have a lot going on, and certainly in the Q's and A's, look forward to addressing our challenges both on infrastructure needs, the operational issues that we're facing on the Northeast Corridor, and the vision of our new CEO, Wick Moorman, and what he brings to the Amtrak leadership team. So there's a lot of things to talk about, but happy to be here, and I'll pass it over to Ian.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, Ian Jeffries with the Association of American Railroads, where I'm Senior Vice President of Government Affairs. Great to see so many familiar faces out in the audience, and some new faces as well. The AAR, for those who don't know, represents not only the Class 1 freight railroads that operate in the U.S., but we also represent Amtrak. We represent several commuter railroads. We represent several short line railroads. So we have an associate program that represents suppliers. So we feel we represent a real cross-section of the rail industry, tooth to tail, in the U.S. I counted in my head, I believe we have members that operate in 49 out of 50 states in the United States. While Hawaii does have a light rail system, I don't know that any of our members operate in Hawaii just yet. But the industry, you know, I think we have a lot to say about our impact on the economy, the investments we make, and how we are able to serve both the passenger and freight needs across America. And I'm going to keep it short because I really want to get into the Q&A and hear from Sean and the folks in the audience. But it's great to be here today. Look forward to answering your questions.
Thanks, Ian. I'm Jo Strang with the American Shortline and Regional Railroad Association. We represent about 550 small business growers across the United States. What most people don't realize is that there are 602 railroads across the United States, and many people aren't aware just how big the reach of railroads are within our country. Short lines are different from the Class 1s in the way that we operate. We're smaller. We have an average size of 30 employees, unlike some of the larger railroads that may have upwards of 3,000 employees. We are geographically tight in the sense that we maybe have a small footprint. We have railroads as small as 2 miles long, and we're regional railroads that are large, like Montana Railway over the East Coast. So we have a lot of variation in our size. What we don't have, though, is variation in our needs, and that is we need access to capital, and we need to be able to invest in our infrastructure, because we, like many, compete with highway traffic, and the concern that we have clearly centers around that ability to have access to capital and access to invest in our infrastructure, which is why whenever you hear about short lines, you typically think about the investment tax credit, which is something that we talk about every time we're on the phone. So we We serve 29% of the country in terms of 1 in 4 rail cards generated on the system comes on our office short line. And we like to say we serve the first mile and last mile for our country. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chauncey.
All right, thank you all. I want to start this off with a very short question, rapid fire, 3 words or less. What is the #1 policy priority for the organizations? Nicole?
Probably, most people expect me to say infrastructure, but I'm actually going to say fair trade.
Caroline?
Safety. Safety underpins everything we do, every day of the week, every hour of every day, 24/7. Safety is our top priority.
Safety and investment, safety is #1. Investment, I would say, is the other word that comes to mind. And it's the investments that we're able to make that support the system, that create a safe system that allows us to serve our customers to the high quality they expect. So 2 words, safety and investment.
And I'll piggyback on that. And then safety and the Shoreline Safety Institute, ability to invest in our infrastructure. I'm going to cheat and use more words, and the tax credit.
Well, I think infrastructure is on a lot of people's minds right now. Next week is Infrastructure Week, and there's still a lot of talk about the infrastructure package through Congress. What would you like to see in an infrastructure package? We'll start with Joe.
We think that infrastructure package should include railroads, and we'd like to start talking about railroads.
So we approach an infrastructure package maybe a little differently than most people think, because we are privately financed and invest 25, 26 or higher $1 billion a year. We're not seeking a large chunk of federal funding. I would say 2 things that come to mind, 3 things that come to mind. Adequate funding for our partners in the passenger community. Getting back to the user-based system in supporting highway investment. We've seen $140 billion of general fund transfers to support the Highway Trust Fund since 2008. Truckers are our biggest partners. They're also our biggest competitors. We pay for our infrastructure, and we believe our competitors should as well. So we'd like to see something on the revenue side for the users of the highways. And then we would like to see, because we do spend our own money, we want to be able to put that money to work more quickly, getting projects approved, permitted more quickly, making some common sense changes to the regulatory process just to make things function better. Thank you.
Well, certainly funding is a major issue and a challenge for Amtrak, as anyone knows here that follows our funding issues with the completion of the FY17 funding package. There was very good news for Amtrak in that there was an increase in funding for FY17. Obviously now we'll be moving forward with FY18, but to the extent that an infrastructure package materializes and there is direct funding available for Amtrak and the multitude of projects that we have on our infrastructure, the assets we owned, is of critical importance. The Northeast Corridor, as many of you know, consists of a number of assets that are over a century old, and they are nearing the end of their useful life, and they must be replaced. And these projects are ready to advance, really ready to build. So certainly we understand there's a lot of talk about PPPs and public-private partnerships, and there's certainly some opportunities in passenger rail, but perhaps not as many as there are in other sectors. So certainly direct funding for infrastructure, and also we need to consider and find ways to replace our aging fleet across the network. As many of you may know, the RIF program, Amtrak was able to access funds to purchase new train sets that will replace our Acela train sets on the Northeast Corridor. They will be manufactured in New York State by Alstom, and will go into service beginning in 2021. Additionally, when you think about what we've purchased from Siemens, locomotives built in Sacramento, the extent that we can continue to find opportunities to replace our fleet, these are creating American jobs, they are contributing to U.S. manufacturing, and will, again, Nicole, I'm sure the team has done nicely for you, but there's a huge supply chain that's associated with that. So infrastructure fleet. These are part of our wish list in an infrastructure package.
Yeah, I almost can't say it better than you, Karen. I think that all of that, echoing everything that they just said. I will throw in one more, which is digital infrastructure, the Internet of Things, making the locomotives smarter, making our highway road crossing systems smarter. That is an area I think that should be seriously looked at. It's sort of kind of a new way of thinking about infrastructure, not new, but a newer way of thinking about infrastructure when we move forward in any sort of larger infrastructure package. And also, I'll throw in my favorite, Section 130 highway railroad crossing safety. That is, currently right now it's within the FAST Act, but it's a small program, can be used for grade crossings, can be used for moving crossings, making an overpass or an underpass to keep communities safer. And we're always going back to the safety. I'll try, always trying to make our communities safer, railroads safer. I think that's an area that's important. That certainly should be beefed up.
Great. Going to Ian, the rail industry primarily deals with the Federal Railroad Administration and the Surface Transportation Board. Both have leadership vacancies right now. Are there priorities for what you want to see in the nominee to come forward?
Sure. I think, quite frankly, I think you can boil the same qualities down to leadership at either of those agencies, and that the folks we'd like to see fill those spots have the technical expertise, operational expertise, having an operator, someone who understands how rail networks function, and the impacts that policy decisions have on the ability to function, I think is critical, especially at the FRA. When you look at the Surface Transportation Board, having individuals with sound understanding of economic policy, the economic consequences of the issues and decisions that are made at the board, and frankly the understanding of the need to invest to support our customers. A strong operational and economically principled understanding of the issues, I think, is critical regardless of who is up in those slots.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I was just going to say, that whoever, specifically the FRA administrator, they're willing, FRA has kind of been tasked with this grant-making ability now, and not just under Amtrak, but under other entities, RIF loans specifically. And I think that whomever is chosen should be able to understand and be willing to argue for that investment.
And I'll add in there that we'd like to see somebody that considers the needs of small businesses, because one-size regulatory action doesn't fit all.
Caroline, you mentioned Amtrak has a new CEO who's been on the job for less than a year now. What are Wick Moorman's policy priorities and the priorities for Amtrak versus the previous leadership?
Yes, we were very fortunate in September of last year. Wick Moorman, who had retired as longtime CEO, chairman, president of Norfolk Southern Railroad, came to Amtrak, and he's been there just a little over 6 months. But from the onset, he made it clear that there were a few things he would be focused on. One was to relentlessly focus on improving our safety culture, and he had a very good record at Norfolk Southern in terms of safety and bringing that mentality and culture to Amtrak. There's already been a lot of progress in terms of shifting and refocusing new training efforts among our workforce, which has been very, very favorably received. So safety, but in addition to that, really focusing on improving the way Amtrak runs as a business, focusing on the bottom line, on improving our efficiency, our productivity, and our effectiveness. Second of all, he really wants to focus on modernizing the customer experience. And as we talk about bringing new train sets into service in the future, we also need to look at other features across the network and really creating a modern system. Right now, a lot of our equipment is meeting around the half-century point in terms of age. And if you get on it, it doesn't feel terribly modern. And that is certainly not something that's attractive in terms of bringing and attracting new passengers. And lastly, we talked about this and we'll continue to talk about it, is investing in our aging assets. Whether it's our fleet, our infrastructure, our continuing with workforce training and technology. There is just a laundry list that is very long, very serious, and he is making sure that we as a company are prepared to move forward and also demonstrate to the federal government that we are worthy recipients of federal funds. So those are, again, it's a short list, but there's a lot to do, and people are really energized behind his leadership.
Nicole, how has Congress changed since you began representing the railway supply industry, and how have policies shifted?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, I mean, you know, unfortunately, the way the landscape has changed since I started at RSI, which was forever ago, you know, things are a lot more fractured, it's a lot more partisan. You have some non-traditional candidates that are been elected, some with no experience in office. So from our perspective, whether there's manufacturing or rail, and it doesn't help every 2 years we have to go back in and re-educate. So you have this shift in how you communicate, how business gets done in Congress, right? Nothing moves onesies and twosies anymore. You have to really hook up to a coalition to get anything done anymore. And you really have to understand that you need a lot of consensus building to really get your message heard, and especially in a world today where everyone's attention spans are that much shorter. No offense, but I see a lot of people on their phones. You know, that this is just the way that life is now. So we have to be a lot more smarter about how we message and how we get consensus as an industry. Panels like this help. It helps get the message out because you know that we're pretty much 95% in agreement on the topics that we're discussing. There'll always be that 5%, because that is association life, and that's fine. You know, we'll get there. But you know, we just keep talking, and we just keep doing the good work, I guess.
Joe, we heard both senators mention the FAST Act. And I'm wondering if you can comment about how the industry has changed since the FAST Act was put in place.
Well, certainly some of the new credit programs have been stood up. We have yet to see how they're going to work, but we're eager to access that capital if we should be able to. We are very pleased that there was an extension given to short lines for competition control, and happy about that. So really, I think it's about some of those two things. We're also, on a different note, not related to past, very pleased with the appropriation that was given to FRA and that there was continued support for short lines in the industry.
And if you could amend the act in one way, and add one amendment, what would that be?
There are too many to cover.
Anyone else?
I'll speak for Caroline and myself. I would say, call it the rail were reauthorized. I think it's more on the financing side, but a long-term dedicated source of funding for our industry passenger.
Well said. I mean, that is the biggest challenge and issue for Amtrak when you're talking about planning sort of multi-billion-dollar projects over multiple years to have the ability, the stability in funding to be able to predict 2, 3, 4 years down the road. We don't know. We operate on an annual funding cycle, and that is something that really needs to be addressed. And so we talk about a predictable, dedicated funding source. How do we get there?
I'll do one more question, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. We'll go to Ian, and if you can just elaborate on how critical freight rail is to the U.S. economy.
Yeah. It's not a softball. So thank you for that question. So like I said, freight railroads were privately financed, private infrastructure. We've invested $100 billion in private capital back into our networks in the past 4 years, about $25 billion annually, if you divide that by 4. I think our latest stat is $60 million a day going back into the networks, all private capital. And you know, that results in jobs. We have a fully unionized workforce of approximately 165,000 individuals. And those are well-paying jobs. I think we produce about $274 billion in direct, indirect, and induced economic activity based on our latest numbers. We import-export in the hundreds of millions of tons of goods. We export twice as much as we import. So, you know, and when it comes to, you know, basically every industry you're seeing, intermodal, commodities, autos, the bulk of those are moving on a rail car at some point. And we love that, and we think the public should love that because the motoring public, that's congestion that's not on your highways. For those concerned about emissions, it's a clean source of transportation. It is a safe source of transportation that will continue to get safer with the investments and dedication we have. And you know, we feel that we truly are the backbone of the economy. If it's moving across this country, it's moving on rail, and quite frankly, that involves passengers as well. Millions of folks, hundreds of thousands of folks, that's how they get to and from their destinations, to and from their works, especially in urban corridors that would otherwise be sitting in traffic all day long. And on the small business side, that's short lines, that's building those connectors out to individual facilities that then feed into the overarching network. So we really feel strongly that, you know, rail plays a critical component in goods movement, people movement, and overall economic support. And thank you for that question. I didn't know that was coming.
All right, if you'd be interested in asking a question, raise your hand and I'll call on you.
Thank you so much for your comments today. I'm based here in DC, but grew up in Texas, where people are incredibly attached to their cars. Not to say that's a bad thing, but I'm curious from your perspective, you know, how are you raising awareness in the general public for support for rail, and do you see a bit of a transition in the years ahead?
No, that's a great question, and what we find is it's happening organically. It's not a matter of us, Amtrak, or passenger rail groups saying, don't you understand, this can really improve the quality of life in your community or city. The communities are taking cues from other communities where they've brought in commuter rail, light rail, more options in terms of connectivity. So the challenge for Amtrak and the states that we partner with, also in the corridors across the network, is the desire for more, you know, more service, more frequencies, more stops, new equipment. In a world of really limited resources, how do we satisfy that growing demand? So happily, you know, I say, it's not about getting the word, spreading the word. It's really where communities are looking to the future and realizing we are running out of space in terms of interstates and roads. We want to provide different options for a new generation of commuters and travelers that are less inclined to buy cars or to drive. And so there really is a shift. And again, I think the challenge is on us and on our leaders and the policymakers, people in this room, to find ways to provide funding so we really can, looking ahead to the next 50, 100 years, provide meaningful, modern transportation options.
So you asked us if we take Amtrak, and I do. I even take Amtrak that isn't the Northeast Corridor, called the National Network, and I do it for business. And I want to just make 2 comments about that, see what you want to say. I find it efficient for if I have a speaking engagement, say in Chicago or Savannah or Atlanta, because you have to sleep anyway, and you get to downtown with a shower, with breakfast by 8:30 or whatever, something like that. However, there's 2 problems that mess this up, those of us who use Amtrak for business. One is on time. And on-time issue is often a matter of these other railroads, and you do explain that very well, but then they're here too in the room, and they can comment. And I've noticed, and other people notice, that as the legal position of Amtrak vis-a-vis priority, those issues gets better, the on-time gets better. When it gets worse, the on-time gets worse. So I think there's some whole issue. The other problem is in maybe infrastructure matters, such as in northwestern Indiana and the Chicago Yards, for instance. 27 railroad lines, but somehow Amtrak can't get one of them at the moment because there's something that has to be built. So I'm just wondering if you can be more marketable and more popular to business customers outside the Northeast corridor if you can address those two issues.
Well, on the first issue, certainly reliability matters, no matter what mode of transportation you're operating in. People, whether you're flying, whether you're taking the metro, you want some level of assurance you're going to get from here to there, on schedule. So it is a challenge. It is true that there are, again, across the network, we are finding more and more travelers migrating to Amtrak for a variety of reasons. Convenience, less hassle, they can work on the train. And we continue to work with our freight railroad partners to find ways to improve on-time performance. And it ebbs and flows, but frankly, with Wick Moorman as our CEO, someone who's worked very closely, was part of the freight rail industry, that certainly helps in our dialogue. And certainly, we're a member of AAR. These are not new issues for the company. We are tenants on their infrastructure. And we recognize that. And we actually have a lot of great examples of areas where we've targeted areas where we realize there's congestion, we need to make some infrastructure improvements. The Tiger grants, for instance, on the Southwest Chief are a great example of where we can really come together and find ways to improve the reliability. Because it's very complex. It's very complex, and we recognize that. I know that there's no easy answer to that, except that I think we all are in agreement that we want to continue to find ways to make things better, and so that our customers have, again, a reasonable appreciation of that they're going to get on the train at 4 o'clock today to head to Chicago. They're going to get there at 8:30 in the morning. It's good service if you've never done it before at the Capital Limited. I highly recommend it. Regarding congestion issues, I'm sorry, in terms of the granularity of what's happening in Indiana, in and out of Chicago, there are a lot of challenges on the network, but I'm just not, I'm not prepared to really provide any depth to that question. I will look into it, my own indication.
Any other questions? Well, question for Nicole. You deal with the manufacturers who support Amtrak and rail trains and short line. There's a lot of conflicting viewpoints among those different industries. How do you address those challenges?
Sure. So we have members who manufacture specifically for passenger and transit community authorities, and then those who are just specific to the freight industry. And I think with every trade association, your basic idea is to try and collect all of those different points of view and kind of boil it down to a particular platform. So we have our technical and program committees that meet fairly regularly and talk through all of these issues. And from that collaboration and discussion, we're able to establish our priority issues. And then to take that one step further, we work very closely with our rail industry partners, whether it's with Amtrak or APTA, which is the Public Transit Association, as well as with AAR and the short line industry on their program and technical committees to further get at those issues where we may have some common concerns, not always common, but concerns to kind of get to a solution, whether it's on the regulatory, the technical, or legislative side. So again, it all comes back to communication and just a willingness to try to find a solution.
If there are no other questions, I'll ask one final question for everyone, and we'll start with Nicole. But what would you say is the one key takeaway that you would want policy professionals to take away from today's event?
So I think for me, it's just to think about how interconnected the rail industry is, whether it's on the passenger side, the freight side, the supplier side, the small business side. It is all very interconnected. So when you ask the question of, what's the freight priority, what's the passenger, what's the rail, we really need to keep in mind that the health of the health of Amtrak, the health of commuters, the health of the freight industry, it's all connected. And then you have the suppliers, those that are behind the scenes pushing to make the railroad safer, to come up with the research and development to serve their public, their customers more efficiently. So it's just that interconnectedness, and it's to really think about the impacts on the regulatory side and the legislative side, and how that impacts business, and then just manufacturing and the ability to keep people employed.
Carol?
Well, first, just to those in the room that work on transportation or Amtrak issues in particular, we at Amtrak are very grateful and appreciative to the policymakers, to the congressional leaders who continue to provide the support that are necessary to run our national system. We take great pride in what we do. We know that we are constantly trying to improve our services and deliver the highest level of service that people want and expect when they get on a train. And we have a lot of work to do, and we acknowledge that, but we are doing everything we can to make Amtrak a better and better experience for our customers. The most important issue is, I think, that this is very complex. And when you go back 100 years, there's a great book, and anyone who's heard of this book called Conquering Gotham. It was written by a woman named Jill Jones, and it was about the visionary leaders of the Pennsylvania Railroad that built Penn Station and built the tunnels going in and out of Manhattan. And it makes you step back and think, in 1900, right, what people were doing, the private capital that went into the construction of those assets. And here we are, 110 years later, faced with major challenges. And people will look back at this moment in time and say, thank goodness they did that. Or they'll say, why didn't they do that? What were they thinking? So I think we all know, we've got on the infrastructure front some heavy lifting to do. But I think the momentum is building, the consensus is building that we've got to act. And so I think it's the seriousness and the magnitude of this issue that collectively we have an understanding of that, and we find the will and the funding to make things happen.
Yeah.
So I would say two things come to mind. One, rail is the safest mode of surface transportation, and it's directly tied to my second point. It is due in no small part to the massive investments that have been made over the past 30 plus years in this industry. We always say the well-maintained railroad is a safe railroad, and the billions we invest every year continue to allow us to further improve our safety performance and provide the service that's needed. We're able to make those investments because the regulatory structure that governs our economics is largely balanced. It allows us to earn the revenues necessary to make those investments. And as long as we keep that level playing field out there, we'll be able to continue to make the private investments to meet the needs of our customers. When you start pulling the strings of policy and then turning the dials of policy, it has consequences. And I would just caution against any thought of changing the regulatory economic landscape of our industry, because it has served this nation, its industry, and its customers very, very well over the past few decades.
Joe?
I would say to policymakers to be careful of the consequences. When you make a policy, there shouldn't be transportation winners or losers. You need to really balance it out so that it's equitable. If there's a change, for example, in truck size and weight, it's an unfair advantage to trucks, and it really hurts small business railroads, and it harms safety in the United States. So I'd say just consider the consequences carefully, and we're always happy to talk to you.
All right, very interesting. I want to thank, first of all, the Association of American Railroads for sponsoring this event today. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us, and thank you to all of you for coming out.